Hi, Ari. Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Here is everyone. So good to see you all. Does the background noise sound really loud? Okay, good. I can't believe this is the last class before the last class. That's crazy. How is everyone feeling? Can we do a go around of check-ins?
I can go first. So I've been feeling excited that the quarter is finally ending. I feel like spring quarter always feels really long. So I'm really happy it's ending, but I also have kind of like mixed emotions because I'm really sad that this class is ending too.
Aw, we'll stay in touch. Who do you popcorn it to?
I'll pass it to Allison.
I don't even know. I'm just like, I don't know, like the quarter is ending. I need to finish my senior thesis by Monday, and I'm not even close to done. And then like, I feel like I haven't even thought about the fact that I'm about to graduate because I've been so overwhelmed with deadlines this quarter that the other day I was like, oh, I didn't even tell my parents about the grad walk. And then my dad was all mad that I like didn't tell him beforehand. And I was like, sorry, I'm just like so overwhelmed. But it's nice to know that it's like almost done. I'm just going to grad school, so I'm just staying in school, but it's still nice to like move and have a fresh start and stuff. I'll pop from Taylor.
Thanks. Wait, hold up. Where are you going to grad school?
I'm going to Boise State, which will be interesting. Living in Idaho.
I've heard
but-
such good things about their like science, like environmental science and stuff. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Side note. I'm doing pretty good. I have a lot of mixed emotions too. I'm not dealing with a thesis deadline, but it's definitely like sad, happy. Took like grad photos Saturday. So it's like it's feeling like it's really coming to an end. So yeah, just kind of all over the place, but like a bit stressed with finals as well. And like, yeah, I feel like I kind of just like walked into a job with like my org that I'm volunteering for this class, but I'm like really liking it. So that's really exciting also. So it's like, yeah, it's just all over the place. Cicely, would you like to?
Sure, I'm doing good. I'm excited to graduate. It's kind of weird though because like as soon as our presentations are done next Friday, I have like the weekend and then I start working immediately that first Monday. So I don't really have a break, which is unfortunate, but I'm looking forward to working and branching out and stuff. Lydia, do you want to go?
I'm kind of looking forward to summer because I have just been in school every single summer since I started community college. And this is the first time I'm actually going to get a summer. So I'm really excited about that. But same thing like Allison, I have not been in the right headspace or like too focused. And I keep forgetting that graduation's coming up. I've gotten text messages about like, oh, are you walking? And I was gonna have a grad party with my close friends, but now I'm so lazy that I don't even want them to visit me in Santa Barbara, even though I've been begging for anybody to just come see me like, oh my God, we have such a cool beach. The college town is nice. You guys got to see it. And I'm just like, never mind, canceling the party. I don't even want to walk anymore, but doing good. Let's go with Martha.
I'm doing okay. I feel like with deadlines, I'm not graduating yet, but yeah, I feel like it's just the light at the end of the tunnel that never seems to come. Yeah, but that's about it. I'll pass.
Yeah, this quarter has really sucked. I don't know. I got my cap and gown yesterday and I was like, oh dang, I forgot that I'm walking. And also like you said, Lydia, I wanted to have a graduation party, but like I don't want to be around people yet. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm also taking a break before I apply to grad schools. Just to see like what direction I want to go. But yeah, eventually hopefully I could have a grad party and it's gonna be disco themed. So that's gonna be exciting for me. Aaliyah, have you gone?
Aaliyah?
Me? Yeah. Can someone
Okay.
like, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. My mute thing is weird. I'm feeling a lot. Divestment happened. The divestment vote happened on, I mean, technically Thursday morning. From 6:30 p.m. Wednesday night to 6:30 a.m. Thursday morning. And as one of the student sponsors, I didn't get to speak till 4 a.m. and then we spoke till 5 a.m. So I'm still recovering from that. It failed by one vote. So it's the closest we've ever come. Was now the 7th time we put it up. So I don't know, just a lot of emotions. At first, we thought it was going to fail, and then we thought it was going to pass, and then it failed. And I think that, yeah, I don't know what else to say on it. It was just, we spent so much energy and time preparing. I'm just kind of exhausted right now and need to get right back into school. But yeah, also excited for graduation. Just feels crazy that it's like in a week. And but I'll miss this class. And I'll popcorn to who hasn't gone. Rachel.
Hi. Sorry I'm late. I'm not feeling too well today. Is this just like a check-in, how we're doing?
Yes, exactly. Anyone else having issues hearing Rachel? Okay. Yeah, Rachel, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I don't think my internet's working.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I said I'm doing okay. I'm not really feeling too well today, but I'm excited to graduate. I think I'm ready to be done with school. So, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say, don't feel bad. Same exact thing happened to me when I graduated. I completely forgot until like the day before that I was graduating. And I looked a mess the day of because I didn't like do my makeup or my hair or anything. So yeah. I wanted to share with you all that I know this has been really a heavy time, and I have really appreciated all of your reaction papers. And unless I have contacted you regarding having issues, you potentially having issues with passing, then you are good. You don't have to worry about sending me any more reaction papers right now. I just want you to concentrate on your final presentation. So happy to answer any questions related to that.
Professor, you just mentioned that I guess you were like contacting people if you weren't sure if they were going to pass. I'm not sure if I have submitted any, so I was wondering, if I haven't gotten an email, I'm not that I haven't submitted any, but I haven't submitted recent ones because I've been forgetting. If I haven't got an email, do I still do them or?
You did submit the earlier ones, just not the recent ones. So
yeah, not the recent ones.
You don't have to do them all, but if you could just do one, that'll be fine.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Any questions? Because I saw several of you email me regarding questions regarding your final presentation. And Rachel, I contacted Kim from Surge. She said she was going to text you because she thought that you joined the local government pod, I think she said. And then Ari, Frank said that he was talking to you today at noon. So hopefully that happened.
Yeah, I finally got to talk to him. I think he's just really busy, doing really important work. So yeah, but I'm not worried about it anymore.
Okay, great. And then I think Taylor, you had questions?
Yeah, I had questions, but they might be like to me specific for the group. But I was just wondering because I am working at a nonprofit instead of like an organization. So my work looks a little bit different from everyone else's. So like what I should touch on other than like the mission of the organization that I'm with and like how much of it should I go into, because like I'm putting together like comms and like donor cultivation things and also looking at grants. So that doesn't, yeah, it's not directly sometimes speaking to the actual like movement organizing stuff we're talking about in class. But yes, I just want to kind of know how I should frame the presentation.
Yeah, I would say if you could just take a step back and look at how it fits into like fair and just transition in the grand scheme of things, and concentrate on that and the ways in which they do their work. And then it would be great if you could describe what your role is in it now and what it's going to be if you're going to continue to work on it throughout the next month. Because I know some of you, since you've been a little bit late connecting to your folks, some of the work is still going to be done throughout the month of June. So even if you haven't done it all yet, like what is the work looking like? Yeah, we did talk about
cool.
We did talk about the questions at the last presentation or the last class meeting. Wait, was it the last one or the previous one? Does anyone have those that they could share, or do folks need me to dig up the notes and put those up on Gaucho Space? Aaliyah is saying, could you send it out in an email? Yeah, do people prefer email or Gaucho Space?
They both come through to our email, so either is fine. If you do an announcement on
Okay, great.
hand when we're making the presentation? Thank you.
The first part of what you said got cut off. Can you say that again, please, Aaliyah?
Like a second after, or like a minute after I unmute, and for you to be able to hear me. But I was just saying, so we can have the questions on hand for when we're making our presentation. That would be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And then just so you all know, Marlena's not going to do an individual presentation. She's just doing the presentation with Lydia on One Step a la Vez. So we are not going to be as pressed for time as we thought. I personally think it might still be good to
I
get
also have a
on
question.
10 minutes before, just to make sure we're not rushing to make sure we have a break. But if folks are still good with that, yeah, if we can all call in at 1:50 instead of 2. And I hear, Lydia, you have a question?
Oh yeah, I had a question. So earlier last week, a few of us kind of well, like some of us have like different numbers from each other, and we all kind of found out in a way that what if we were to do a kind of group presentation, but since there's 10 of us, maybe we could split it 5-5, and then we could be able to like break down the questions like, okay, so here are the people who are since same as Taylor, mine is more of a nonprofit as well. So I feel like I have certain niches that I focus on at my org that would fit to answer parts of questions. And I think that if we were to all put our brains together and answer each question particularly, like, okay, so this is something that I focus on more here, and this is what I've learned from this question, and then I think it would also help with to come back and then have this. I think if we work it all together, it'd probably be more cohesive and flowing, because then if we were to all split it between regurgitating like answering like specific questions, I don't know, but it was just something that we thought of, so I wanted to kind of bring it to us all whole.
So I don't know if it's just my internet connection or if Lydia was fading in and out for anybody else, but I couldn't really hear that all. Does what Lydia was saying make sense to folks? Because for me, I'm still not seeing the full picture of how that would work.
I mean, unless you guys have great presentations already and it flows completely well, I don't really know if I'm explaining this well at all. Maybe I'll get back to here unless someone wants to chime in. I'll come up
I
with a better
can
one.
kind of join in, like,
Okay.
I guess like the work I've done with like Surge and stuff, like it isn't quite enough for like a full presentation. So like if it'd be cool if we like combined our presentations for like what we've learned like through this course and like what we're doing, what we plan on doing, and then talking about like the different aspects of intersectional justice that like are going to continue to impact like our careers, like because I know we're all headed in different directions. Like I do like mental health stuff, so like in my head I was thinking of like mostly presenting about like the work I do with like crisis counseling and stuff, and how that's like an alternative care type thing. And then we kind of all talked about like the impact of this class and like how we plan to like continue to spread intersectional justice.
I feel like what you all are discussing can actually happen through our discussion of the presentations, because I guess I just worry that if we mix it all up like that, we're not going to be able to hear specifically like the work of each organization and kind of their role in the larger movement and how it's intersectional. So I don't know, does that resonate with folks, or are you feeling like you want to try to do what Lydia and Rachel are talking about?
I like what they were saying. Like, I don't know if anybody else is on the same boat, but this quarter I was working like almost 40 hours a week. So my like contribution to the org that I was assigned to like wasn't substantial, and I couldn't even go to like the big meeting at the end because I had work and I can't call out. There's like huge labor shortages. So if like combining that aspect of it with like Rachel's work and like Lydia's work would like help all of us, then I would be down to join their group.
I mean, I guess that is another way that we could do it is Ilse, Lydia, and Rachel can have your own group where you do that. But I know Marlene was going to do a presentation with Lydia, and I haven't heard her chime in on this and whether she is down with this idea or not. So I guess I just don't want to change it for everyone if everyone is not in agreement with going this route. So I'm trying to figure out a compromise that would make everyone feel good with it. Yeah, see, that's my concern too, is I don't know how much time, what Aaliyah is saying. She's saying she doesn't know how much time she'll have to actually get with other folks to plan out a presentation. Because I know you all expressed concerns over group projects earlier on. That's why I didn't force it on any of you. So I guess I would just say if you haven't been able to do as much work with the organizations you were assigned to as you had hoped, if you can at least try to learn as much about the organization between now and your presentation, because again, it's only a 5-minute presentation because we shortened it from the original idea when it was going to be 7 to 10 minutes. So if you're able to learn more about the organization and talk about the ways in which it acts in intersectional manners or ways that they can improve their intersectionality, that would be great. Does that make sense? All right. It's kind of a lot to keep track of the chat. Can we vocalize what we're feeling so that we can come to agreement? Because I'm seeing some people say they're okay with either, but then also seeing people are concerned about getting together to do a group thing between now and then. So where are folks at? Because we need to make a decision that it works for everybody.
I feel like maybe if like the people who have time for a group thing and want to do a group thing, like they just combine their presentation time and do that all together, and then the rest of us who don't have time like stick with those 5-minute individual presentations, and then we just have to change up the order we came up with last week, I think.
Yeah. So I had posted the order. Who are the people that want to do a group presentation?
I think it'd be me, Lydia, Ilse, and Ari, maybe?
Maybe
I'm
Marlene.
okay with either. I get confused because I don't know what the group option is. But I'm totally fine doing anything.
It's just also going to impact the time, right? Because we had figured out the time for it. So are you all saying that all 3 or 4 of you, if Marlene joins in, will be speaking for 5 minutes? Or it would be a longer presentation because it's 4 of you.
I'm fine presenting for one step a la vez, just do like the 5-minute
Okay.
presentation.
So then it would just be Rachel, Lydia, and Ilse. And see if it's possible. Okay, but the last class is a week from today, so I feel like we kind of have to figure this out right now so that you all have time to do it and feel prepared when Friday comes around. Keep the 5-minute mark. Okay, so 15 minutes total for Rachel, Lydia, and Ilse. Okay.
If you guys are going to talk about like how the class has like impacted you and your futures and stuff, it might be nice like if you guys went last and like kind of summed up everyone's presentations by talking about the class. So it'd be like everyone doing their individual orgs and then the three of you talking about the class in total to kind of finish out the presentations.
Yeah, that works. So they'll go last. So I will just go into the order that we had established and kind of take Rachel, Lydia, and Ilse out separately, and then just put them down, and that'll just fix the order instead of us going through the whole thing over again. Does that make sense? Okay. So I wanted to just share that I appreciated all of your reaction papers, but since we didn't get a chance to all discuss after Dr. David Pello's talk, since we went to the symposium, I wanted to spend a little bit of time kind of talking about those of you who did your reaction papers on those talks. The ones that you all did on the MCC stuff that not everyone went to, I read them and I appreciate them, and you'll still get credit for them, but since everybody didn't attend them, it's harder to have a discussion about them. But I think those of you that wrote about Dr. Pello and the symposium brought up a lot of really important points. Rachel, you talked about how Dr. Pello's talk tied together the importance of abolition and environmental justice. But that one of the articles talked about repurposing police and corrections officers to jobs in environmental justice. And that while that's an appealing idea, just knowing that a lot of the people that are drawn to that work have what you called an authority complex and deeply seated implicit bias. So basically that would have to be addressed right before they got repurposed to do EJ work. Do people agree with that, or what did you all think about that?
Yeah, I think it was from one of the two readings for last week. I'm so bad with names, I don't remember like who the author was. But I thought it was like, it seems nice in theory, but like studying like sociology and psychology, like it just seems like, you know, like statistically people that are like cops or corrections officers have issues with authority and have like this authority complex. So it just like doesn't seem like you could just like transfer them to, you know, work on like for social justice. You know, it just didn't seem like something that would like.
Right. So some healing work would have to be done, right? And I think that what you said also intersected to what you said, Cicely, because you were talking about how Dr. Pello really highlighted intersectionality. And what stood out to you is that he was not willing to reach across the aisle, right, when it came to the Green New Deal stuff. And that you felt like that was a different way of looking at things, because you kind of think about, okay, well, you know, maybe rationalizing the way that people feel and trying to get them to change their minds over time. But then you stated that there are some things that are not debatable, right? So like immigrants being in cages and being treated as horrible as they're being treated, that is not debatable. So when there are people that think that it's fine for immigrants to be in cages and being treated the way that they are, that there is no reaching across the aisle in those kinds of situations. So yeah, how do you all feel about these things? Because I think it's a very popular argument, to say, oh, well, if you just talk to them, they'll be able to come around. Do we think that's true, or what do we think?
I think it's nice to like think it's true, but at the same time, like these issues have been going on for so long and so many of those conversations have been had, and like the problem still exists. Nothing's been solved yet. And so I think like there comes a time where you almost need to like stop trying to convince other people of your opinion and just like demand the change to be made.
I definitely agree with Cicely. Also, like a lot of these, like talking to someone or having a conversation, like no one's really going to change their opinion, right? They're only going to continue fighting. Specifically when like people's minds are set and like it's like set in a long history of racism that's already been embedded in them, right? It's kind of hard to change that history and just change their mindset when they've been like living that. I don't know if that makes sense. Like it's kind of hard to get that like decolonial, mindset out.
Well, because colonization is the legacy of this country, and several European powers. And Aaliyah, you mentioned that with Felicity Stone's point that we really have to talk about how the military and prison industrial complex are at the root of environmental justice. However, there's a lot of privileged people that completely, blatantly ignore this fact. So that's hard, right? Because this is our legacy of our country. We don't try to change people's minds in a nice way. We don't act diplomatically most of the time. Most of the time, we use our military to impose on other countries, to kill people. And when you look at it, that military industrial complex and the amount of money that we spend to support our military industrial complex, the billions of dollars, you can see how that translates to cities within the whole country, right? Because if you look at most given cities within the country, the percentage of money that they give to policing and prisons is very high. So it's like a direct correlation, right? And then we can see then how environmental justice is then impacted because we don't spend money on making sure that people have beautiful communities that they can thrive and live in, because all of the money is being squeezed into the police. So when we talk about defunding the police, it's literally like not only physically taking the chokehold of Black, Indigenous people of color, but also taking the chokehold off of the budgets of cities across the country, right? So yeah, why do you think people completely ignore this?
I'm so sorry. Can you just say the last sentence again? You cut off a little bit.
Oh, I said, why do people completely ignore this? Do you think that they're just not thinking about it, or we need to educate people and make them understand how this impacts us?
I think it's always like nice to think that if we educated people that they would change, and I think that's true for some, but then like this class has also like helped me see that like so much of what's wrong has been a deliberate and like educated decision as well. So
Also, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I don't have any patience, and I feel like I've said this before, but I don't have any patience to like teach people like why our humanity matters, like I don't care about reaching across the aisle and being like, hey, like there are labor shortages right now because nobody wants to work because we're being treated like shit. Like I've been working since the pandemic started and it's been awful. and I just like don't feel the need to reach across the aisle. Like I just don't have the emotional like patience to do that. And I think that that's probably like toxic. Like I would love to be able to like talk to people, but I also don't think that like it's our responsibility to explain to people why we have a right to live, and like have a right to not die. Yeah, so I don't also there's like no things that I like in terms of like bipartisanship or whatever. I don't know like what I'm willing to give up in order to meet the other side. You get me? For the Green New Deal, like all of the policy work and stuff, like what are we willing to like sacrifice, right? Like that's my thinking. Like, am I willing to be like, okay, yeah, like let's keep letting these like corporations pollute the earth, like that's fine. And as when is it gonna end?
Yeah, I think, Martha is completely agreeing with you, and I agree with you too, that it's not a responsibility to educate others, especially white folks often call on the labor of Black, Indigenous people of color to tell them, how shitty things are and why things are the way they are. But it's like every time, I'm in a room full of white people, and me being the one brown person in the room, I suddenly somehow become the representative of all brown people. And that's too much pressure. Like, I don't represent all brown people. And why don't white people do their own work to try to decolonize themselves, and instead of always asking us to share our pain and our struggles in order to make them see, right, that our humanity matters. And I think that's okay to normalize that and say, you know what, I'm not going to educate you right now. You need to do your own education. And I think it's important that people take, ethnic studies, and especially that white people take ethnic studies classes so that they can educate themselves on our contributions and the things that Black, Indigenous people of color have been through in this country and around the world. And one thing that Aaliyah mentioned too in your reaction paper is transnational solidarity and the importance of that. So I think that that's a super key point that I don't think we took enough time to really concentrate on, but I want to definitely uplift that and say that, yes, that is super important, because these oppressions that we see in the United States, they're all over the world, especially where, European countries have a legacy of power. And capitalism, let's be real, like wherever there's capitalism, there's a huge amount of injustice. So yeah, I just want to thank you all for your thoughtful reaction papers and just really taking the time to care about this class and to care about the movement and to care about your role within the movement, because you matter so much. Like, you can change so much if you just like believe that you can. And I think part of what this society tries to do is teach you or try to convince you that you don't have power, but every single person does have so much power. And Aaliyah, I'm so sorry that that vote did not pass, but the fact that you got the closest that you ever have, the fact that there was just that one vote, you're going to get it next time, and so keep doing it. Like, sometimes it takes a long ass time to create change, but it's going to happen. And I really, really believe that. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't take the time to teach this class or to do any of what I do, because I have a daughter who's 6 years old and her future is depending on us. So I'm like kind of wanting to cry right now, but I'm going to keep it together because I'm at Universal Studios and I don't want to do that. But thank you so much. I just am so appreciative of you all and getting through this pandemic, and as hard as it has been, yeah, it's been great, and we are totally going to keep in touch. So I'll if you all don't, I think I've already shared my cell phone with most of you, but if I haven't shared it with you, I'll post it. And yeah, there's a lot going on, and I believe our world is transforming. We just have to help the transformation happen. Any other comments before we go on break? I feel like I'm having internet issues. I can't tell if people are talking. I know I just said a lot. All right, and so nobody is volunteering your playlist yet for the last class? I gotta do it, I gotta be the DJ?
So the previous teacher of the class would curate a playlist for each week. And we asked him if he'd like to come up with one, and I think he said he's down. So
Perfect.
that takes.
Thank you for reaching out. I had reached out to Diane, Charmaine, and Aaron about inviting him just because I wanted to get the okay from them, because this is my first time teaching, so I don't know if there's any rules around this stuff. So I hadn't sent the invitation yet, so hopefully he's not offended, but I'll send it after this class. But that's great. Yeah, I actually saw that on the syllabus that he put different songs for each week. That's really cool. Sorry I didn't have the time to do that for you all this time. So Seth Anderson-Oberman will be on right at 3 o'clock. He's going to talk to you about labor for Black lives and a lot about working class issues and how working class issues tie into intersectionality. And his talk is going to be a little bit longer than the other ones that you all have had so far, just because there's a lot of material that he wants to cover. But he said that there's a lot of discussion built into the talk, so he's not just going to be lecturing at you. And so because he's going to talk because he thought that his talk would be closer to 2 hours, I want to make sure that you all get enough of a break to like get yourself something to eat and drink so that you're not like, with your thoughts wandering off or feeling like you're going to pass out because you haven't had anything to eat or drink. So yeah, fix yourself a sandwich or a taco, whatever you want to eat, and get yourself a nice little tea or water, and just make sure you're hydrated and taking care of yourself. And yeah, we're in for a treat. He's going to be zooming in from Philadelphia. So this is your first person that you're hearing from another state. And I've known him for over 20 years. He used to work at the AFL-CIO. He used to coordinate the Organizing Institute when I was the National Student Labor Action Project coordinator. So that's how I know him. So he's gonna break it down, and I'm really excited for this. But yeah, I want to make sure you all have time to prepare yourselves a little something to eat and drink so that those 2 hours feel good. So I'll see you all back here at 3 o'clock. Hi, Seth.
Anna!
So good to see you.
So good to see you too. It has been way, way, way too long.
Yes, way too long. Aw, it's so good to see you.
Is this? It's so good to see you too. Is everybody on? Is this your class?
This is my class, but technically they have
Well, they're
2
on break.
minutes left, so they're probably not quite back yet.
Okay.
But this is
All right.
everyone. Yeah. How's your day going?
Nice. Huh?
Oh, I said, how's your day going?
Pretty good, I guess. I don't do these kinds of things, So I'm a little stressed out because it's a very intimidating forum for me. But
No, don't be stressed out. You're gonna be great. Let me make you host right now.
Okay. I'm just the only thing I'm worried about is technology snafus and trying to work through this stuff. So that's my biggest fear, and hopefully we'll be okay. If not, we'll make the best of it.
No worries. I just made you host, and so far we haven't really had too much technological issues, so we should be okay.
Good. I like your background. I wish I was there. That's not.
Yeah, I'm actually at Universal Studios, so I just didn't want you seeing all the people behind me. Yeah, I found the quietest possible place that I could find here, but it's still kind of loud. I think so. Can you still hear the background noise?
Very faint.
Oh, good.
Very faint. Yeah. It's not bothersome at all.
All right, class, it's 3 o'clock, so if you're back, please put your
camera. Did you talk about
up.
in the first?
Huh? Sorry, were you asking?
I was just asking what did you guys talk about in the first hour?
Okay, so we talked about their final.
Yeah, I was just asking what you guys were talking about in the first hour.
We talked about their final presentations that are happening next week. So just wanted to make sure that we ironed out any remaining questions about that. And then we talked about the lecture that happened last week about environmental justice and abolition and kind of how it all ties together. So yeah, welcome, Seth. I had put Seth's bio up. I hope everybody got a chance to read it. But I've known Seth for 20 years now, and has always just been such a great comrade and leader in the movement, and just really knows how to organize and cares about intersectionality and the working class. So Seth, if you can go ahead and share anything you want to share about yourself, but I did share your bio. So anything you want to start with, and I don't know if you want anyone else to kind of do a quick introduction of themselves so you know who you're talking to.
That would be great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. I can read your names, but I understand that you guys are all involved, or at least many or most are involved in organizing, and I'd love to hear just if we could go through really quickly, and everybody just kind of say what issues they're really passionate, what they're really passionate about and what you're working on. That would be great. Maybe I'll call on the first person and then that person pass it to the next person, and so on and so on and so on. Does that work? Okay. Allison, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Allison. My pronouns are she, her. I'm interested in education. So as part of this class, I've gotten involved with the Santa Barbara Coalition for Ethnic Studies Now. And just thinking about ways to kind of make education more a means of liberation rather than oppression. Okay, I will.
Hi, my name is Taylor. I'm interested in everything, but I'm working more in environmental justice and abolition and prison advocacy work. So I'm currently a part of an organization called Fire Forestry and Recruitment Program, which works with currently incarcerated and former incarcerated firefighters and creates gainful employment opportunities for them on reentry and certifying them as wildland firefighters to ease the transition into an actual firefighting department or operation.
Wow.
Yeah, no worries. Cicely, do you want to go?
Sure. Hi, I'm Cicely. I'm really interested in the prison industrial complex and kind of decreasing violence in general. I work for a nonviolence center right now in my hometown called the Meta Center for Nonviolence, which works with educating the public on nonviolence and the principles of it.
Yeah, I'm Ari. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm really interested in capitalism and how its role in oppressing different marginalized folks throughout the world. Right now I'm working with Cause, mostly doing research, kind of looking how Santa Barbara has changed over time, and certain like laws and things that we've done that have oppressed people in this area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I'm a fourth year transfer, pronouns any and she. I am sorry, someone is dancing behind the camera trying to distract me. I'm interested in helping out in low-income communities, specifically youth, the ones who are thinking of dropping out of high school or who have gone to continuation school, trying to get them GEDs, helping them with their resume, and maybe an inclination to want to go to community college, be a mentor for them, or maybe in a community sense, like specific groups, like say like the Southeast Asian youth population in my hometown. Or I kind of worked with Anna with One Step a la Vez, and they are in Fillmore, California. Currently, I'm working with Freedom for Youth in Santa Barbara, which focuses on youth who are in the juvenile justice system, transitioning outside of the justice system or to prison. And we're helping them build leadership, education, career, and basically trying to energize the community, help them network and be more empowered. I could send it over to Rachel. Have you went?
I haven't gone yet. Thank you, Lydia. My name's Rachel. I use she, her pronouns. I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm really interested in mental health and providing mental health as an alternative form of care. So I volunteer with the crisis text line, and after I graduate, I'm planning to work with the Santa Barbara Response Network. I've also been working a little bit with Surge and their school pod, which has been working on getting more ethnic studies classes and getting SROs out of schools. So that's what I've been working on. And then Marlene, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Marlene and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And something that I'm really interested in working in is within the foster care system, just because I know it tends to be really broken. And a lot of the youth coming from the foster care system tend to just be kind of thrown out in the world with like no guidance or anything. And in my community, there's a lot of low-income students who tend to drop out of high school or tend to get involved in gangs, or there's also a lot of high teen pregnancy rates. So I'm currently in an organization called Jóvenes Sanos, where we kind of tackle different topics from like childhood obesity to kind of getting different recreational activities for the youth here, since here in my small town of Watsonville, there's really nothing here. So that's kind of my focus, is kind of just working with youth, and particularly troubled youth, since they tend to be looked down on rather than given the resources that they need. And next, I'll pass it to Aaliyah.
Hear me? Yeah, I have to wait a
Yeah, there you
minute
go.
for my mute thing to unmute. Hi, my name's Aaliyah. I'm
Hi.
a fourth year undergrad UCSB. My majors are global studies and philosophy, and my pronouns are she or any. I have been, what I'm most involved in is advocacy around sexual violence and survivors. I'm currently vice president of a nonprofit that's student led and student started, Students Against Sexual Assault, and I've been involved in that for like 3 years now. I'm also I'm passionate about a lot of different things, but I'm also part of Students for Justice in Palestine, and that's something that has been taking up a lot of my time recently. UCSB just went through our divestment on Wednesday, 12-hour meeting, and I was a student sponsor, so that was a lot. It failed by 1 vote, but it's the 7th time we've brought it to the table, so we'll be bringing it again.
And it's the closest they've gotten.
You
Yeah.
you didn't lose. You just haven't won yet. That's
Yeah, exactly. So those are a couple things. Also really interested in decarceration. What I'm hoping to do, I'm graduating soon, so I'm hoping to go to law school at some point and become a lawyer, a defense lawyer for survivors who have been accused or committed acts of violence against their abusers. So that's kind of the route I want to go. I will pass it to, sorry, I was zoning out. I'm not sure who hasn't spoken. Ilse, have you gone?
Yeah, I can go. Okay. Hi, my name is Ilse. I'm a senior social major, Black Studies minor. Pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm really interested in labor and like community work. I just joined the CAT team for the San Fernando Valley, the community action team here, and they're in the process of starting to get a community fridge installed here in the San Fernando Valley, because the one that we had, the property manager didn't want it there anymore. And then also I'm in the process of starting the training to become like a first responder, as opposed to like calling like 911. So yeah, like community work or like labor, that's where I'm focusing on. Hoping to like get some experience as a community organizer before I decide if I want to go to that for grad school or like law school. Yeah, I'll pass it along.
Thank you, Seth. Hi, my name is Martha. I'm a 3rd year environmental studies major. Currently, I'm interested a lot in abolition work, but also environmental justice. Environmental justice major, so environmental justice is like my main, not my main concern, but I feel like where I root most of my focuses on, and just kind of spread around. But I'm definitely really focused on immigrants and immigrants' rights, because I'm undocumented myself, so it's really personal for me. Yeah, I think just like a little bit of everything. I'm still trying to find my specific, focus, because you can't do it all. I know that. So yeah, I'm not sure if anyone else is missing.
Yeah.
Alice?
Rachel went, right? I think that might be it. I think everybody went. Yeah, I think so. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I mean, y'all are working on some really important and certainly, complex issues there. So it's exciting that you guys get to come together to have these kinds of rich discussions with Anna and together. You know, I mean, I think there's no better life to lead than a life where you're, you know, working to help yourself and others, you know, together and build that kind of community and solidarity and culture of support. So I applaud all of you for kind of taking that direction with your lives and not being business majors. So thank you so much. I really want to appreciate Anna for inviting me to speak with you guys. And I definitely want to say with and not to, because my hope is that this will be a very rich discussion that everybody will, you know, contribute to, add to, you know, we can all learn from each other. So my name is Seth Anderson-Oberman. I am an organizer currently with SEIU Healthcare Pennsylvania, which is the old 1199 P. Incidentally, was 1199 was Dr. King's favorite union. We like to brag about that. But and I work with healthcare workers. My particular turf is I work with nurses who work for the Department of Health as community health nurses. They've been incredibly busy under really difficult conditions this past year, given the pandemic, as you can imagine. And with nurses who work for our state psychiatric hospitals. And so there's, you know, lots of challenges there as well, as a lot of the residents and patients who come to the psychiatric hospitals come from prisons. And, you know, there is like a kind of a violent offender wing of the hospital, which has, you know, can have very aggressive for, you know, nurses and staff there to be attacked and beaten. And so it can, you know, there's a lot going on there, and there's an incredible nursing shortage, and people worked, you know, 16-hour days for weeks on end during this pandemic, and it's been a really challenging year. But you know, also, you know, I think we're coming out of it more organized than we did going into it, which is always good. And with some things to try to build on. But anyway, that's before I was with SEIU, I was a political director for the American Federation of Teachers, New Jersey. Mostly worked with higher ed, with faculty and a couple K-12 locals. Before that, I organized charter schools in Philadelphia, charter school teachers into the teachers union there. I don't know, going back, you know, I don't know how far we want to go, but it's been 22 years. I met Anna through the United States Student Association. I believe that is that where we met Anna, or was it JWJ?
I mean, it was through SLAP, so it's both.
Right. You know, so I kind of got my start organizing as a student, but I didn't really see myself as a student. I saw myself more as a young worker, working full time and taking classes part time. And I was going to Temple University. And you know, what I would do is I would work full time one semester, no classes, save up enough money to go the next semester. And then the next semester, I would try to get all my classes on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then work the rest of the days, take another semester off and work full time to save to go to the following semester. So it ended up taking me a really, really long time. And I never lived on campus. And so I always, it took me a while to kind of identify as a student. But I eventually, started organizing on campus. And the thing that got me, I'll say off my ass for the first time, out of being an armchair theorist was the Rodney King verdict. And I know you guys aren't old enough to remember that, but I'm sure you've heard about it, especially living in California. You've seen it and so forth, and you live. So it's part of your historical memory there in California. But it was something that, I was so angry about. And I just, I wanted to do something. I didn't know what to do. And literally had somebody knock on my door with a petition for a civilian police review board. And they came in and we talked for like an hour, and I signed the petition. And the next weekend I was out at the bus stop getting other people to sign the petition. And, we ended up passing what is in retrospect a pretty weak civilian review board that didn't have any teeth or anything, but it was one of the first steps that we had to go through. And it was my first foray into organizing. And then, I brought that onto campus when Temple tried to fire all of the union security guards on campus who lived in the community in North Philadelphia, and replaced them with non-union security guards at half the pay with no health care. And we organized students in support of them to try to get their jobs back. And like many fights, we built a strong organization out of that. And we built a group of students that tried to break down some of what we saw as the artificial divisions between students and workers, right? And tried to build in unity with the workers on campus who, made Temple run. So anyway, long story, but this is, I wanted to get into this discussion about intersectional organizing, which I think is so incredibly important. And, there's a lot that I think you guys learn. I'll say this, I've been in union organizing now for 22 years. And so some of the language, some of the lingo that kind of exists in academia, I haven't been around for a while, right? And so, I'm hoping you guys will, cut me a little break if I'm, if I'm a little clumsy on some terminology. But I want to try to just talk about things, and they're complex things, but I want to try to talk about them with you in kind of as plain and clear a way as I can, using everyday language as much as I can. And so I guess, can I go ahead and share my thing? I can do that, right? Let me see.
You should be host already.
What's that? Okay. My big fear here is that, where is it? Hold on one second. Go. Okay. All right, wait, back. Okay, here we go. So my big fear here, I don't put presentations like these together in my daily work. And so I was trying to organize my thoughts and put something together for you guys. And my daughter, who is 17 and graduating this year and much more adept at using this technology, kind of helped me put some of this together. But it'll be my first time kind of working through it, and hopefully everything works. So I want to talk about intersectional organizing. One class, many identities. Let me see here. Okay, kind of talked about that. So I wanted to put this out as kind of a guiding organizing principle to start the discussion. Have you guys, are you all familiar with this, what's become a chant that we do often in the movement for Black Lives? We have a duty to fight for our freedom. We have a duty to win. We must love and support one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And of course, this comes from our revolutionary sister, Assata Shakur, who was imprisoned and almost lost her life at the hands of the police for fighting for socialism and Black liberation. And is now in Cuba, living in Cuba. And I got to meet her when I was there in 1997, which was very cool. So I wanted to start out with a discussion, kind of start pretty basic and we'll build from there. But what are some of the ways that people identify? Can we just talk about, can we name some? Can we identify some? And Anna, can you help me facilitate as far as kind of like the discussion and calling on folks? Because I'm with this up, it's kind of hard to see everybody for on my end.
Sure. Let's go with Taylor. What are some ways that
what are some ways people identify? I guess, yeah, I guess like most like basic ones, like socioeconomic status, like race, gender, sexual orientation, all those types of basic markers, then more complex ones too.
Absolutely. Does anybody want to add any specifically?
Queer.
One more, sorry.
I said queer.
Queer. Thank you. I don't know that we need to name them all. As you said, Taylor, there are many. But thank you. Yes. And I would say, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, that when it comes to identity, there are at least two parts of that question, at least, right? How you identify yourself and how society identifies you. And sometimes these things can be in conflict too, right? They're not always, we're not always identified how, we don't always identify the way society sees us. So identity can be very complex. I am Black and Jewish. I'm biracial, Black and Jewish. And so for me, as a kid growing up, I was always kind of wondering what I was and where I fit in. And, so that kind of entry into identity for me, I think was really important and pivotal for me, because it kind of like gave me an entryway into exploring identity in general. And I realized pretty early on that, identity isn't, that it isn't, a lot of times it isn't natural, right? It isn't inherent. It isn't essential to who we are, but it's something that has been created that changes over time. And so, for me, that was that was a pretty important early, kind of thought. All right. So when I was in college a million years ago in the 1990s, many of my professors would pretend that class didn't exist. Do they still do that today?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I actually took a class last quarter and my professor was saying that the only thing that matters is class and not race. So it feels like there's been a
Interesting. Okay. So is right? Like, what we're talking about is an integrated understanding analysis of how these things come together. But many people, many professors didn't teach class. They didn't talk about class. All they talked about was race or gender or sexual identity. And it was a time when multicultural studies were kind of exploding. And we could talk about and explore race, gender, sexuality, immigration status, really anything but class. And so I used to, it used to make me mad as a working class student that part of my identity never got discussed, never got talked about. I used to call these professors the ABC professors, the anything but class professors. As if these identities and social categories, race, gender, sexual orientation, evolved and developed in a test tube, like divorced from the struggle between classes to produce and reproduce wealth in society, like if they were just kind of floating out there on their own. So I heard, who was it who talked about socioeconomic status? I remember somebody when okay.
Taylor?
Well,
I think it was Taylor.
I think it was Taylor too. That was my memory too. Taylor, do you remember mentioning socioeconomic status?
Like as one of the classifications, like identities, or in the what we do our work in?
I think you were talking about what you do, what you do your work in.
Yeah, creating gainful employment opportunities for formerly incarcerated people on reentry.
Right. So what's the difference between socioeconomic status and class? You don't have to be the only one to answer this. Anybody can jump in.
There's like a class I'd say is more concerned about like how society sees you and where they place you in socioeconomic status can have more to do with like income. But I think they overlap a lot as well.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Yeah, no, I think that's an important distinction. I think, and that often does get talked about in society. We talk about socioeconomic status. We talk about the differences in income and these kinds of things. And, with that, there's this concept of the middle class, right? Which is like, part of this narrative around American exceptionalism where, classes aren't fixed. Anybody can start off in the working class, but if you work hard and you go to college and you can become middle class, or you can become, you can become rich, if you have a business, right? Like all these things, right? That's how we talk about class generally in this country. But I would say that is not class. That is socioeconomic status, and class is something very specific. Class is the economic position that a group of people occupies within the mode of production. So I'm not talking about income level. I'm not talking about socioeconomic status. I'm talking about workers and owners. Do you produce the wealth, or do you own the wealth that others produce? Does that make sense to folks? And so I want to.
So basically, it's like they're there to support the bigger group. Like you're working hard, you're making all the money, but they're the one that gets the money, kind of thing.
Exactly. So there's this myth that if you work hard, you can get rich, but that's not how people get rich. People get rich by other people working hard for them, and then they take the money.
Gotcha. So class is kind of like your supporting the organization, even though you're an active member of the organization.
When you say organization, what do you mean?
Everything, like the prison industrial complex, the school education systems, hospitals. I don't know. Is that too vague?
Well, I think that there's a clear division, right? I don't think that because we live in a capitalist society doesn't mean we're all capitalists, right? There are those, and capitalism is a specific mode of production, which we'll get into a little bit. I love this poem. I want to share this poem, and I think it's a good kind of a lead into that discussion. Would somebody be willing to read it aloud?
You should.
Okay. All right. I'll do it this time, but not next time. All right. So this is a poem. Let me just say, all right. I have a few things that I want to say about this poem, but I'll read the poem first. What did you tell that man just now? I told him to hurry. What right do you have to tell him to hurry? I pay him to hurry. How much do you pay him? $4 a day. Where do you get the money? I sell products. Who makes the products? He does. How many products does he make in a day? $10 worth. Then instead of you paying him, he pays you $6 a day to stand around and tell him to hurry. Well, but I own the machines. How did you get the machines? Sold products and bought them. Who made the products? Shut up, he might hear you. Right? So this is, I love this poem. And sometimes, someone with a little creativity, can find a way to say a really complex idea very simply. And, you can read 3 volumes of Marx's Capital, and it's a great read with tons of really eye-opening analysis. I do recommend that you look into it. Or you can kind of get the main idea across in one pretty amusing page. And that's what happened here. By the way, if you look at the little red circle there, October 1937, you'll see that date, and you'll see United Automobile Workers, right? Does anyone know what happened starting on December 30th, 1936? Just trying to put this in context. Okay. Well, that was the historic Flint sit-down strike. Okay. When 2,000 auto workers for GM shut down production and occupied their assembly plant for 41 days. And this strike led to the unionization of the entire auto industry. So my guess is that this poem was written during that struggle, and it appeared in the UAW's magazine shortly after. And, I think this illustrates, one of the main contributions of Karl Marx to liberation theory. And that is that labor creates all wealth, period. There is no other source of wealth for wealth in human society, in capitalist society, other than labor, period. So, here are some super easy questions, kind of going from that. So what is the mode of production that determines our social, economic, political, and cultural life in the US and across the vast majority of the world? Kind of already mentioned it.
Labor? Or
Labor is, you're right. So labor is the most important part of that mode of production. It's what creates the wealth of the society, but it has a name that's greater than just the component of labor.
Capitalism.
Yes, capitalism, imperialism, by another name is, you know. So what is the number one above all priority of the class that owns the wealth in a capitalist system?
Power.
To keep their wealth.
To keep their wealth.
Aaliyah put in the chat profit.
I don't know.
Can you say more about that? How do they keep their wealth?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I said in the chat, I don't know if you can see it. Profit.
Profit. Bingo. Bing, ding, 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 ding. Absolutely. That is the number one above all other priorities of the class that owns the wealth in a capitalist system. And not just profit, but the way this system is structured and organized, they're compelled really to maximize profit, right? There can never be enough profit. Corporations must always seek to maximize profit or they risk corporate death. Does everyone get that? Because I think that's really important to understand. Okay. So from there, I think the question arises, is moral capitalism possible? Yes or no, why or why not? And I would like us to discuss this.
No, because it places profits over people.
Excellent. Excellent point. Excellent point. By necessity, it places profits over people, right? And we can talk about that a little more if there's confusion, but it sounds like you guys got it. Does anybody else have anything they want to say on that? Is moral capitalism possible? Is there anybody who thinks that it is?
I guess hell no.
Interesting, you know, because morality is one of those questions. You're like, morality for who? You know, because I'm sure that the capitalists would argue that under capitalism, morality means maximizing shareholder wealth, right? Like that's their morality. That's literally their responsibility and their obligation. So if they're not doing that, in their minds, they're being immoral. I agree with you guys. I think you're right. I think it cannot operate by any other, any other way. And I think if it does, sometimes, that's because for short periods of time, when workers and people's movements converge to force concessions from capital, it's not because they want to provide a better life. It's because workers and people's movements are organized to demand it. But I think it's important to understand that, no sooner are these concessions given than the super wealthy are conspiring to figure out how to take it all back, right? And that's the pendulum swing we see back and forth throughout history, right? Is like people coming together to fight for more of what we deserve, of what we create. And and the bosses trying to figure out how to take it all back, right? That's the conflict. So any thoughts on that?
So I don't know if you're going to get to this later on in the presentation, but are you going to talk about how we could, or like moving away from a capitalist society or like a reimagined one? Because what we're kind of getting at right now is like, oh yeah, capitalism is about individualism and how, yeah, sure, it's equal opportunity for everybody, but it's not really. And other countries, other than the Western countries, are good at being collective and trying to find opportunities for everybody. So I was just wondering where.
Well, I think that is the discussion that our entire movement is having, right? Or kind of the central question, right? How do we move forward from here? And so I think we'll get into that some in this discussion. And I got to try to keep track of time because it goes fast. But I do want to have this. I do want to have this discussion a little bit more, so we're kind of defining terms and we're on the same page.
Gotcha.
So, all right.
Sense. We're all on board so far.
Cool. So this is how is class or sexuality?
Okay, I kind of want to share, but I feel like mine, I'm gonna be giving a purposefully wrong answer. I feel like class kind of brings in race, gender, sexuality too, because in class as well, because of your race, your gender, or your sexuality, you'll put yourself in a different segment within the class, you'll feel subordinated in the part of the class that you identify in as well. Like if you're a middle class person and but you own a house and all that, but you're still a Black middle class person, you're under the other people that own houses,
Yes. No, that is a really, really important distinction, because class is not monolithic. It's not, right. It's differentiated. There are many segments to class. Ultimately, there is one working class. There's only one working class, but it is very differentiated. Okay. But I love that answer. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else want to take a stab at it?
I don't think what I'm about to say answers a question, but I think it's just a way of thinking that, if I was thinking in a different way, how people, like, the society makes you want to believe that you can change your, like, race, gender, and sexuality is something that you can't really control, right? You're born into it, right? But now we can decide on, right?
Right. Yes. I think that is an important distinction. Thank you for bringing that up. It's also an important part of the illusion around class, right? Anybody else? Okay. So this might be controversial, but I don't know. I mean, you guys seem to really get this, so maybe it's not, maybe it won't be, but or maybe you'll disagree. But I would assert that race and gender and sexuality, are social constructs that help reinforce the existing class structure. So that doesn't mean that they aren't deeply felt. It doesn't mean that they don't have real, implications for people's lives. And this is important. It doesn't, or themselves, sorry, or that they themselves don't, that these other identities don't in turn change the way that classes develop. They definitely do. It just means that they are not rooted in biology, but in economics, ideology, politics, and culture. They're not independent of these phenomena. So can someone give me an example of how race or gender, as they're historically constructed, are used to reinforce capitalist class relations and advance capitalism's goals?
Can you repeat the question?
So I think
Can you give me an example of how race or gender, as they're historically constructed, are used to reinforce capitalist class relations and advance capitalism's goals, namely maximizing profit?
so I think like if we're sexist, we can justify paying women less, or forcing them to stay at home and create like the laborers for capitalism for free. I don't know if that answers the question specifically.
I think it's a great answer. I think it's a great answer. Absolutely. Anybody else want to offer another one? And we'll talk about it.
I think kind of related with race, if you're thinking about like labor unions and the history of unions in this country, unions would have been much stronger had they been intersectional, but because of racism, our labor unions were a lot weaker. So I think that's one way that, you know, capitalism kind of crushed.
Yes. Yes. So, you know, I think you both really hit on something. You know, I think if you look at the wage gap that exists, right? Gender wage gap, racial wage gap, the way that gender and race compound to create an even larger wage gap for women of color. You know, these are ways in which these institutions kind of advance the goal of maximizing profit, because what they do is, you know, like you said, right? You can justify that, you know, women's labor is supplemental labor, right? They're supposed to be in a house taking care of kids, and it's supposed to be, you know, a male earner. You know, the husband's supposed to go out and get a job and support the family. And so if a woman has to work, it's just supplemental income. So, you know, we can pay her less, right? Because you know, the main income is the income of the male, right? So that's, you know, that's one way that historically that was justified. And with racism, I mean, obviously, you know, all of the ideological, you know, rationalizations that went along with paying or not paying, right? Because racism existed in this country for 300 plus years. I mean, slavery existed in this country for 300 years. You know, so anyway,
I don't
you guys
know
get what I'm saying.
if this is even worth adding to this too, but I remember how you shared earlier about how that was one of the big strikes that United States had, one of the first ones. And I remember learning about how it was because when the Irish immigrants were coming in, they were cheaper because they were just looking for any work. So yeah, United States was trying to have capitalism and individualism. Like everybody can get a job working for Ford, but it was cheaper to hire the Irish immigrants, and they didn't complain about anything. And so the Americans were like, wait a second, now we need to go on strike because these Irish people are taking all of our jobs. And the strike only happened because not that the people were mad that they weren't getting paid enough, but then they realized now that like, oh my God, if we wanted to get the jobs that the Irish have, we'd have to work a lot harder. And that's not fair. So the strikes only happened because of the people that were dominant finally like speaking up about it, but it didn't work when the lower class people did it. And also the whole woman thing too, it hurts how like they don't have good like maternity leave stuff for women. And if they were to hire women, they would have to think about like, oh, now we have to give her more. But they also don't give a lot of maternity leave stuff for men, because there are families out there that are just raised by two fathers, you know what I mean? They need maternity leave too. Or also, what if the mom is the actual breadwinner and the dad is kind of just a supplementing person, you know?
Right.
So
Right. Yep. No, excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And that's actually like, and you didn't know this, but is a perfect lead in to the next thing, which is a clip I want to show you. Really perfect, really, really perfect. So a little bit of a warning. This scene has some graphic language. It could absolutely be triggering. And so just putting that out there so folks are, can kind of get in that mind frame. But the setup, this is a scene from the movie Matewan. I don't know if folks have seen it, but a tremendous film set in 1920, real life events, Matewan, West Virginia, Mingo County. And this is a secret union meeting of coal miners who, were forming the United Mine Workers Association, the United Mine Workers of America. And the miners had threatened to go out on strike to improve conditions. And the company, which was Stone Mountain Coal in real life, brought in Black workers from the South and Italian and Irish workers from the North to break the strike. So that kind of sets up this scene. All right, so.
First thing we got to have is all these niggers and all these dagos that come in here to take our jobs thrown out of the mine.
Fine as hell. They got them in our houses. They're sitting at our tables right now, and they're sleeping in our beds while we're out living under a piece of canvas in the back of the holler.
How about union man? Coal operators and their gun stuff. The only thing they understand is the bad end of a bullet. If we show them, we just as soon blow up their damn mines and see them worked by a bunch of scads, but then they go listen.
Come to tell us. You got someone.
Not yet. You come right up on the steps. They told me to see live. This is where the union men meet. So. So.
Can you guys hear?
yes.
I didn't come here looking for trouble. Men stuff to eat. They told me to take this job, Goddamn scab. You what your mouth, Peckerwood. I've been called nigger. And I can't help that way white folks is, but I ain't never been called no scab. And I ain't fixing to start up now. I go ton for ton, loading coal with any man here. When I do, I expect the same dollar for the same work. You got this holler alive, son. You be done good for yourself. Union men, my ass. You want to be treated like men?
treated fair? But you ain't men to that coal company. Your equipment. Like a shovel, gondola car, a hunk of wood frame. They use you till you wear out or you break down or you're buried under slate fall, and then they'll get a new one. And they don't care what color it is or where it comes from. It doesn't matter how much coal you can load or how long your family has lived on this land. If you stand alone, you're just so much shit to those people. You think this man is your enemy? Huh? This is a worker. Any union keep this man out ain't a union. It's a goddamn club. Now they got you fighting white against colored, native against foreign, holler against holler. When you know there ain't but two sides to this world. Them that work and them that don't. You work. They don't. That's all you got to know about them. You say you got guns. Well, I know that you all are brave men. And I know you could shoot it out with the company if you had to. But the coal company don't want this union. The state government don't want it. The federal government don't want it. And they're all of them just waiting for an excuse to come down and crush us to nothing. Fellas, we're in a hole full of coal gas here. The tiniest spark at the wrong time is going to be the end of it. So we've got to pick away at this situation, slow and careful. We got to organize and build support together. So they can't get their coal out of the ground without us because we're a union. Because we're the workers, damn it, and we take care of each other. How can we shut the mines down if we don't dynamite them? The men walk out. All of them. Last chance. And every man that walks out on his own steam, we take into the union. All the Dagos and all the colors. That's what a union is, fellas. We better get used to it.
All right. So thoughts on this scene. Just I'm interested in your reactions and responses.
I think it shows how powerful intersectionality like can be, and how like all these classifications are used to like remove power from the working class. And like once you get past all those distinctions and you just look at each other as working class and that is your identity, then you become much more.
Thank you, Cicely. Any other thoughts?
It reminded me of W.E.B. Du Bois's chapter in Black Reconstruction about how during the Great Migration, when Black workers were in clash with like white workers, specifically like Irish workers, at like when like Irish workers hadn't achieved like whiteness in the way that we view it now, like there were all these fights when like they could have had working class solidarity, but instead like people started clinging towards like white supremacy, you know, and like whiteness as like a marker. So it shows that like that like at any point, like like when we could have had like working class, I mean, when they could have had working class solidarity, you know, like they just like these arbitrary divisions like still affected them.
Yeah, that's that. I think that is one of the best books ever written. Did you read that on your own or as
I'm
part
a
of a
Black
class?
Studies minor, and I took Black Marxism, and it was assigned.
Yeah, it's I mean, absolutely critical, seminal reading to understand this country. I just think it's one of the most profound things ever written. Thank you for sharing that. You know, you know, so to me, this is one of the most powerful explanatory depictions that I've seen on film or television about how capitalism works and what's at stake for workers ever. You know, there are some incredible films. This is one of them, Salt of the Earth. If you haven't seen that, you got to see that. You know, obviously, you know, Norma Ray is great. But this scene, I mean, for me, is just a really, really powerful scene. And little fun fact, John Sayles, who directed this film, wrote and directed it, is from Schenectady, New York. We went to the same high school, about 20 years apart. And Schenectady, like Matewan, was a company town. By its height in 1968, GE employed about 55,000 people out of the 68,000 who lived there. So it was really a company town. And by the time I was living there in the mid 80s, Schenectady was a ghost town. GE had shipped production to poorer countries so that they could pay less and had laid off all but about 2,000 workers. So I'm pretty sure for John Sayles, when he was writing this, there were lots of parallels when he was writing Matewan. But I really appreciate the observations that you guys made about this. I think they're very insightful. Thank you for sharing those. So.
First thing we got to have.
Nope. There we go. I think we can, I want to say, trying to see like where we can skip ahead. Because I think you guys are really advanced in your understanding. But, all right. I think it is important to understand though. So let's just touch on it a little bit. What came before capitalism? I think it's important to understand what this grew out of and what propelled it, what made it into the most dominant economic system in the world.
I don't know.
Mercant. You want to say a little more about that?
I'm like forgetting everything right now. But well, it was mercantilism, and then it grew into like colonialism, which was basically, I would say that capitalism like came from colonialism, in my view at least, because that was the extraction of resources from communities that were racialized and gendered, but mainly racialized. And so when slavery was abolished and blah, 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 even though it's still ongoing in the prison system, we needed a new group of people to extract resources from and get profit from. And so that became poor folks, but especially poor Black and brown folks and poor women.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So capitalism grew out of the contradictions between the emerging mercantilism that was expanding throughout Europe through travel and trade, and feudalism, right, which was a static agrarian system with monarchies, landlords, and serfs. And in this system, serfs worked 3 days a week to sustain themselves and their families. and 3 days a week to produce for their landlord and the church. And in this system for hundreds of years, serfs had a right to the land. They couldn't be evicted. So with the growth of the slave trade and the emergence of a textile, cotton became king in the global economy. And in Europe, land became more valuable to raise sheep than to house serfs. So laws that privatized land ownership were passed, and serfs were evicted from the land and forced into the cities. America and the colonies, as you brought up, slavery was expanding rapidly and really providing the unpaid labor and cotton and resources that fueled the rise of American and British industrialization, and hence modern capitalism. So capitalism would not have developed as it did without slavery. Slavery was the system of unpaid labor, the economic engine that drove the rapid growth of capitalism. And out of that grew the technological advances like the cotton gin, the steam engine, et cetera, that made huge leaps in productivity possible. And none of that is possible without the surplus value, i.e. profits, that slavery created, right? So given its foundational origins, which also includes the genocide of millions of native peoples, colonialism, and the creation of global racial hierarchies, is capitalism inherently racist? Asked another way, I guess, is it possible to create an egalitarian capitalism as far as race is concerned?
No, I don't think so, because its foundation is based on racist practices and on the subjugation of other human beings. So it's not possible to reform something, just like police is based on slave patrols. It's not possible to reform something which grew out of, subjugation.
Right. Absolutely. And so, if we were somehow successful in getting Black and brown people to head our fair share of Fortune 500 companies, it's not going to change the basic structures of capitalism, right? And the was racialized and gendered. Those things aren't going to change because it still requires the maximization of private profits. It still requires poverty. It still requires groups of people who are paid less, and so that's you guys are right on that. All right. We're starting to get to the question that was asked, like, what's next? So I'm going to play this here.
It's one of the things that is always endearing me to Marx and to Marxism. This notion that labor cannot free itself in the white skin when in a fundamental understanding of the history of the United States, and a factor that the left in the United States keeps missing. There is no possibility for white labor to liberate itself, or to put it in a different way, there is no possibility for labor to liberate itself in the absence of dealing with the question of race. The term Black Marxism can mean many different things, including, and it can mean the Black contribution to Marxism, that there was no abstract capitalism onto which were added other things. There was a capitalism which from its inception was global, and from its inception was colonial, that there would have been no development of capitalism outside of the slave trade and the colonization of the Western Hemisphere. And it gets us away from the notion can be looked at in isolation from it shows certain commonalities, but it also particularly, for example, on the issue of race and what has been always called, you had, I believe, a profound in Africa, from Latin America, and from Asia. What has always irritated me in the Black freedom movement is that whenever I encounter someone who says, well, Marxism is a white man's theory, and that's like absurd. Because when you look at the contributions that have been made to Marxism by people of Africa, amazing. I look at Marxism as a theory of emancipation. It is a framework for analyzing history, analyzing society, and a method of thinking. Now, one of the problems that we faced was the rise of postmodernism, which I would argue has been a cancer in the left, and has taken people, beginning with, in some ways, accurate critiques of economic determinism in Marxism. It then has taken people in this almost romanticizing defeat. But what I am saying is that theories have to be revolutionized. What I think is really incumbent to a veteran activists and theoreticians is to encourage the understanding of doing. And for many years has been a dismissal of organization. You know, it's almost the idea that activism is self-assertion, as opposed to what we need to be doing is building organizations to transform reality. And I have great confidence that there'll be more and more younger people that will do it. Many of us thought of Marxism and Marxism-Leninism and Maoism, etc., thought about it almost as a blueprint, and as a result made tremendous mistakes. Made mistakes that cost all kinds of lives. Those that really were the most advanced were the ones that understood there are no blueprints. There's a method. You know, truth always begins in the minority. That doesn't mean the minority is always right, but truth begins in the minority, and it begins usually when it's calling into question something that's treated as established order. And that is as true in Marxism as it is in other things. That there have to be revolutions in theory. Theories critically look at them and decide, does this make sense? Does this any longer apply? And that's the one of the main lessons I'd say to younger folks, because I think that the framework you can't beat.
All right. Reactions to this clip. You see, we're kind of starting to make that transition into the next part of the discussion.
Yeah, I personally, I don't want to take up too much space, but said, my one thing is I've always had this issue with not Marxism, but Marx himself, because obviously Marx himself did not practice what he preached and was capitalist. However, you know, he wrote on Marxism. So it's hard to grapple with that, and obviously he was a white man and all of this. I think it's important that we note that these types of theories and things, whether they were named and publicized before Marx, were around before Marx, and they were created by, by marginalized folks, by Black and brown folks, and not by Marx himself, and white men who do not practice what they preach, able to put it into more academic terms that people cling on to, and want to then, credit these theories to these people. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know, I just wanted to realize how Marxism is like propped up as this person. I think Marxism is an incredible theory. I just don't know that it should be named for Marx, if that makes sense.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think Marx wasn't a capitalist. Marx lived off of the largesse of Engels, whose father was a capitalist, who took care of Marx. But Marx was penniless. He was poor. He lived, he had scurvy. He had, I mean, he was.
Maybe he wasn't, what I meant was he was not working class, and he was not, so there is like, it's someone writing on, it's someone writing on something that they're not that's not necessarily theirs to theorize about, in my opinion.
Yeah. He really analyzed capitalism in a way that nobody before him had analyzed capitalism. And he wasn't so much a cultural theorist, right? He dove into the science, the economics in a way that was groundbreaking, and I think that lots of people after Marx have contributed to it and expanded it. But I think like it was the darkness, and then there was Marx. I really think that that's in terms of like an understanding of how capitalism works explicitly, like being able to lay it out and name it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he was able to, and I think his work is what is widely, you have to recognize the reason he was able to do that and be the first person, or seen as the first person to do that, and that because he was a white man, and because he had access to this certain language that he could
That's
use
true.
in here. There were people that may have been able to do this before him, but did not have access to the same resources and the same ability to be propped up and publicized, and the same language to do this in a way that made it, so that everyone could understand it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I just think it's also, the reality in the history of his life is he wasn't really propped up. He was chased out of about 8 different countries, who, because he was criticizing, the system that benefit. So, he lived a very difficult life, actually. He sacrificed, he could have cashed in and been a wealthy dude. I mean, he didn't do that. To write and expose capitalism. But I do think that there's a lot of truth to the fact that, lots of other people didn't have the same exposure to resources and schools and college and language and all that, that he was able to use, to advance, our understanding of how capitalism worked. But so I don't want to spend too much time on Marx the person, though it's a very interesting discussion. But I want to really kind of like get back to from this clip. And I think one of the things that, and you're getting into this, you're commenting on this, you know, Bill Fletcher, who is also another union organizer and then was the executive director of TransAfrica, you know, says at the end that, you know, theories have to be revolutionized themselves too. And so my question to you guys who are doing this work, you know, who are organizing, do you previous generations to the work, and how does that affect how you show up to that work, right, and how you engage with it?
This is just like speaking personally, but I've noticed when immigration, it gets kind of dicey. Like I remember like the immigration process, like I remember immigrating here. And a lot of times, like I feel like in not as diverse spaces, it's very like romanticized, and also people are kind of unwilling to speak about like the direct role that the US has had in like specifically like you know, people like me and like my friends and family, like the reason like being the reasons that we've had to immigrate here. So I don't know if that's like related to class or just like straight out like people unwilling to face imperial in the eyes, but like I don't bring it up just because like I'm like we're
Yeah, absolutely. No, that I think that's very real. You know, I mean, I'm 50, so I was in my early 20s when this, so, you know, and I was kind of coming into the movement, but there were, you know, the generation of activists before me had grown up, you know, really, you know, with the Cold War between the U.S. and the Soviet Union just drilled into their heads. And so, you know, there was, you know, just you would talk about any kind of working class or like, you know, these kinds of ideas, these kinds of concepts, and the walls would just close. Like those, you know, nobody wanted to hear any of that. You know, I think, you know, some of that is has thawed a little bit because, you know, I mean, you guys, you're a generation that didn't grow up with that, not in the same way that previous generations did. And so I think that there's an openness to explore some of these ideas that you guys bring, you know, depending where you are, that is still, you know, met with significant resistance by people who are in leadership positions in, you know, organizations and movements or unions or so that's real. And you know, I think I don't know, I mean, you guys want to, I'd love to hear your take on that a little bit, what your experience has been more, and thank you for sharing that experience about, you know, what it's been like to talk about being an immigrant and, you know, with the US being the central reason, right? Like why people are forced to flee their countries.
I guess like I have in various different positions, I've met with a lot of obvious side, but different like I call them adults, even though we're all adults, but like maybe 40, 50-year-old adults or whatever versus us. And working within the school, and that tell me about all the advocacy they did when they were young, etc., to try to like tell me that I'm on the same page as me or whatever. And like, while I obviously value that and respect it, it's like those are the same people that then block our current student movements from gaining any traction, or try to put us into like task forces and discussions and these things that end up just hurting the movement and all these things. And they're like, oh, let's talk about it, and then it's anyway, that's just me like ranting. But so I just think it's interesting how like these people can go from, I mean, I don't know if they were necessarily as radical as they claimed to be when they were younger, but they can go from that, and then they come into the institution and they believe that they're in the institution, then the institution ends up telling them their job is essentially to stop students from pushing for change. And so it's like, okay, well, obviously, like, you can't change anything from within the system, but these people, I guess, still think they, anyway, I'm just ranting now, but yeah, that's an experience I've had a lot.
Yeah. Thanks. Do you feel like, because I have just a tremendous amount of respect. I don't Gen Z or whatever, but I have a daughter who's 17, and she's incredible, and she just kind of gets stuff that I think it took those of us before. I just feel like your generation and the generations that have come behind us are moving so quickly through you're learning the lessons, you just like and your courage and your bravery and your putting yourselves on the line, your bodies on the line, and really challenging the systems and structures of oppression is just it's incredibly heartwarming for me. And so I just want to that you guys are forming a communities amongst yourselves to kind of give each other the support that you need to carry this fight forward. And that's what I'll say on that. But I know you have a lot of obstacles in your way that previous generations did not have. And so, I think it's incumbent upon us, to figure out how we can help. And that doesn't happen enough. So, how has and we kind of we've talked about this, I guess, a little bit. So I'm going to try to skip through some of this stuff and keep us moving, because it's 7:30. So how has patriarchy and gender oppression helped advance the goal of private wealth accumulation? I think you guys talked about that, justifying lower wages, which also ties into control over reproductive choice, right, and keeping women at home. The wage gap, which also exists, that's by race equals, so, and is important to dig into and understand a little bit. So if white male workers face exploitation, or significantly higher money go, that they're in the pockets of women. And the answer is that these are literally creating super profits from super exploitation. That's literally trillion-dollar industries. I mean, it's literally the source of trillions and trillions of extra dollars in the pockets of the super wealthy. So in what ways are unions a key part of the solution moving forward? How do unions help working people change the balance of power and the relations of power?
Well, one thing that's very timely that's happening right now is this movement to expel police unions from central labor councils around the country. And some places it's getting more traction than others. But just like, I think the labor movement was the strongest when it really saw intersectionality as a key part of how the movement was going to grow. So just wondering if like that is a topic of discussion. So right now there's a big fight for 15, right, for the fast food workers. And that's a huge thing because it's mobilizing so many more people because we know there's fast food places all over the country. And so I feel like there's a lot of answers to this question. But those are just a couple of things I wanted to name.
Thanks, Anna.
I feel like unions bring kind of like power in numbers. Like if a union is like threatening a strike and enough workers are involved or something, then they know like, well, we have to work with you because we need to exploit your labor to profit. And so if like the people in power have to kind of come to the table and work with you. And when everybody's just working individually as like their individual worker, you lack some of that power because you can't just like storm in the boss's office and be like, I demand a raise. They'll just be like, okay, I'll just hire another one.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's about power, it's about organization, it's about creating a culture of solidarity, and people working together in common cause. You know, at the height of unionization in this country, you know, workers in unions made close to 3% for doing this, from 33% of the workforce being union to 6% of the workforce being union. So that number has gone down. The difference isn't as great as it used to be because we don't have organized power that we had in the mid to late 50s. But you know, if you look at it, you know, I mean, unions also, they create a contract, a legally binding contract where you have to pay for doing the work, right? So in this context, you can't pay women less for doing this, you know, the job than a man. You can't pay people of color less for doing the job than the man. Everybody who does that job makes the same. If you do this job, this is what you get paid. And this is what you're going to get paid next year and the year after that and the year after that, because there's, right? You can look at that and that creates stability, and it creates stability in the working class. And without unions as strong as they used to be, a lot of that stability in the working class, you know, we've seen it disappear. So, you know, those are all, I think, really important contributions. And, you know, workers who wouldn't normally, because we live in a very segregated society too, and this is a big part of it, right? So, you know, into the city that are all white workers, and you've got sections of the city that are all Black workers, and sections of the city that are all Latino workers, and you know, and so a lot of times the only chance that we get to interact is at work, right? And so, you know, being able to form unions and bring people together in that context, you know, is incredibly important because it doesn't always happen outside of work. So, I mean, I think that those are really important ways in which the union is a part of the solution moving forward, and is really like goals of a union, of trying to build that unity among the working class. So let's talk for a quick sec. What are the major reform movements for social justice? And you guys are in some of them. You're involved with some of them. Just call out.
Reimagining juvenile detention facilities.
Abolition.
Trying to implement more ethnic studies.
Okay. I'm thinking of these as kind of like in big box, like in buckets, like the reform movement, right?
Being put ethnic studies would be like a movement kind of thing.
Right. And might fall within, civil rights, Black Power, Indigenous movements.
Yeah,
right?
gotcha.
Might be part of that.
Environmental
Right?
justice.
Environmental justice for sure.
Women's rights.
Absolutely. Women's equality movement. Absolutely.
Queer liberation.
So when we look at these movements.
movement. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say the Me Too movement. And
Yep. So when we look at these movements, historically, where have our social movements fallen short? I think we can look at labor and we can see that historically it's mostly focused on white male workers, kind of historically, from its origins. Definitely has improved a lot. Lots of incredible women leaders and people of color leaders now. But at times it even definitely, it even worked directly against, BIPOC folks, women, LGBTQIA interests. Right. The civil rights, Black Power and indigenous movements historically dominated by men in the front, while women were the glue and did all the things, all the work behind the scenes. And gender queer representation was mostly invisible or marginalized. In this movement, women's equality movement dominated by middle and upper class white women, and working class BIPOC women, LGBTQ and queer and gender queer women had to fight for a voice within the movement. And then if you look at the LGBTQIA plus movement, long time dominated by middle class cis white men. Working class BIPOC women and trans folk were marginalized. So if you're a working class Black trans person, you've got it very, very tough, even in your own community a lot of the times.
Yeah, in the chat,
so
Rachel mentioned that bisexuals are often left out of the LGBTQ movement as well.
Absolutely. Yep. My daughter is bi and she's always complaining about that constantly. All right, I'm going to share the next slide. Have folks heard of the Combahee River Collective?
We read it twice in the first quarter of this class. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. All right. So we're actively committed to struggling against racial, sexual, heterosexual, and class oppression, and see as our particular task the development of integrated analysis and practice based upon the video about the Combahee River Collective, which I think is, but if you guys already talked about it, maybe is that redundant? Anna, what do you think?
Well, I just know we're at 4:42, and I was really hoping that you could get to One question I had is, have you always lived in Philadelphia? Because the whole issue with the bomb getting dropped on the Move organization, like whether that's something that you have any knowledge of that you could speak to, but also talking about specifically labor for Black lives, because I know you just had an action for the anniversary of George Floyd's lynching. So yeah, so not that it's completely redundant, but I also just want to make sure that you're able to talk about those things.
Yep. Okay. I hear you. So I've lived almost my whole life in Philadelphia. There was a 4-year period during high school where we lived in upstate New York and Schenectady. And I was in 9th grade when the police and the city dropped the bombs on the Move houses. I was 14 years old. I was living in Schenectady and watching this happen on the news and at the time. And it was just absolutely horrifying, absolutely horrifying. I later, when I was in my mid 20s, I lived at 45th and Osage, which was just a few blocks from the Move bombing. And throughout the course of my life and activism and working with allies and movements in Philadelphia, have encountered and worked with Move folks, and organized support for to free Mumia, and right now there's a lot of, he's very, very sick right now, and there's a big effort underway to try to get him released from prison, and all political prisoners, especially during the pandemic where people were really incredibly vulnerable, given the fact that COVID was running rampant through the prisons. Yes, I mean, and then there was just a story where the University of Pennsylvania had rather than giving the bones of the African family members back to their surviving families, they kept them in storage somewhere in like the anthropological museum or something, and that came out recently, and there was a big outcry about, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we're human beings. Like, how are you, it's just the morality around this is just, it's non-existent, and was really painful for a lot of people. But yes, we did just have our we did just have our Labor for Black Lives vigil to memorialize the lynching of George Floyd, and also recognize all those others who've died, been murdered at the hands of police and state violence. And it went well. It went well. I want to maybe play another short clip that's a lead into that a little bit. All right, this is the lead in, and then
y'all ready for this? It went viral when we first created it. I knew we were onto something that was resonating in a very deep way. The hashtag is this phenomenon now. Yeah. You want to go there? People were tweeting us like, hey, didn't y'all create Black Lives Matter? And then all of a sudden it's like the Black Lives Matter movement, and then none of us are actually there to tell the story of the Black Lives Matter. The narrative. Black men, and it's like, wait a minute, what? No, we're fighting for all of us. All right, let me just set the record straight. My name is Opal Smeti. My name is Patrice Colors.
I'm Alicia Garza.
We are the founders of #Black Lives Matter.
I am born and raised in the Bay Area in California. It's not many of us left. We're almost like unicorns. I come from a long line of strong Black women. My grandmother was a domestic worker. My mom did domestic work. A lot of my background in organizing comes with women.
I come to this work because I am the daughter of Nigerian immigrant. My childhood, possibly facing deportation, that to me really shaped my entire kind of formative years. I grew up in Los Angeles and witnessed a significant amount of state violence. I remember the police officer who would patrol our block and would harass my siblings. And I remember feeling frightened most of the time. So my coming into this work has to do with the fight for Black lives.
We have breaking news tonight in the case of the unarmed Black teenager shot dead by a crime
When
watch.
Trayvon Martin was murdered by George Zimmerman, this was a case where a child had literally been stalked and killed just steps away from home. The conversation that was happening in the media was, what did Trayvon do to cause his
When Trayvon Martin died was because he looked a certain way. He was wearing a hoodie, and that way is how gangstas look.
Thinking about my 14-year-old brother and literally not being able to sleep because I was like, this cannot be.
When it was announced that the jury had acquitted George Zimmerman of all charges, it actually felt like I got punched in the gut. So I went on social media to try to find words for what was happening. And what I wanted in that moment was some love for us. And so I wrote a love letter to Black people on Facebook. And I said, Black people matter, our lives matter, Black lives matter. And my sister here threw a hashtag in front of it. She was like, that's the business right there. And then my sister Opal said, I have all these skills and I can help build this out. We need people to have a space to tell their stories. We need folks to have a space to dice together so that we can build the power that we need in order to get free.
Need to develop was about an intervention, really declaring that all Black lives matter. Black immigrants, Black folks with disabilities, Black trans folks, bring closer building our power.
Black Lives Matter is about so much more than policing. And that's something that gets lost a lot. And I think we have to bring together more folks than are just working in the and we need to understand how police, right, are a part of the ability of these systems to thrive and function.
I believe that we're in an incredible time with social media. It's been until we can't sit and watch on Twitter or even have to show up physically. We're kind of following in the same tradition as our elders and utilizing whatever means we have in order to get the message out. Lots of folks want to compare us to the civil rights movement. Our movement is not ahistorical, right? It's really upheld the narrative around respectability, around and said, no, we're not irrespectable Negro. We are going to sag our pants. We are going to be ratchet. full selves without closeting parts of ourselves and build together.
You're going to hear it once. All lives matter.
Black lives matter. White lives matter. All lives matter. All lives matter.
The reason that we is because that's obvious, but it's also a utopia that we don't live in. Part of the discomfort around talking about Black Lives Matter is that it breaks open a fundamental contradiction in this country, which is racism and white supremacy. In this next period where we have kind of the sunsetting of one presidency and the ascendancy of another one, we really need to be talking about this question of citizenship, this moment, right? Is what we've been fighting for the whole time, which isn't citizenship like papers, right, but it's citizenship like dignity, like humanity, right? The ability to shape and participate in a new type of democracy. Nobody wants to talk about race in a post-racial society, but this is a real deep-seated disease that this country suffers from that infects. Nail this piece around Black lives. We're actually trying to unlock the humanity of this country. Y'all ready for this?
Okay. I always get choked up watching that video. So we recently, we have been working to put together a coalition in Philadelphia called the Labor for Black Lives Coalition, which was, in many ways a response to the massive uprisings last May and June, where there was no visible labor presence. And, what we want to do, what we're working to do is to conduct anti-racist pro-liberation education within Black-led and majority Black unions in Philadelphia, starting there. Of course, open to all unions and doing that work with them too, but starting with Black-led and majority Black unions in Philadelphia. We want to expand the conversation beyond policing and criminal justice reform to talk about, what else is included in Black lives when we say Black Lives Matter. It's not, it's everything. It's everything. It's employment, it's housing, it's healthcare, it's it's the arts, it's culture, it's everything. And we're, and we're fighting for full lives. We're fighting, to be able to live full lives. So we want to support our youth and our allies in the community. There's a real disconnect, I think, between, we saw that at these rallies last spring, labor was not there, and not in, and Labor for Black Lives needs to be the bridge, needs to be the thing that connects, our youth, especially our Black and brown youth, and working class youth, to the labor movement, right? And connects our labor movement to, to youth. And so currently, and we want to build a base of political activism for Black and brown working class candidates rooted in our communities and tied to organized labor. And currently we include 11 unions with over 75,000 members in the city that are part of our coalition, including nurses and healthcare workers and teachers and blue and white collar city workers and restaurant and hotel workers and postal workers and railway workers and others are part of our coalition. And the thing that's amazing is that we really have the ability within ourselves to be able to transform the city. When we organize between our workplaces and our communities. So that's what we're doing. I can share on WHYY coverage. It's short. I can share a clip of the rally that we had, the vigil on Tuesday. If there's time, Anna, I'm looking at you to see if there's time. It's about 2 minutes long, and then we can just come back and say goodbye, I guess. Hold on one sec. There we go.
George Floyd's death set off protests, calls for action against racism and police brutality across the United States and around the world. His life can't breathe became the rallying chant for marches that gathered so many people in solidarity. From the mouth of the babe, George Floyd's 6-year-old daughter Gianna said, "Daddy changed the world."
Be convicted. The cop who put their knee in his neck for 9 minutes, 29 seconds. I'm pleased and I'm happy, but I also know that there are thousands of other individuals out there that you don't know their name, but there are hundreds and thousands of others that you don't know their name, that we are absolutely honoring them today. And his family will tell you, honor those brothers and sisters today the same way you would honor him.
When I think about what happened to George Floyd with the police officer putting his knee on George Floyd's neck until he died, there is a knee on the neck of education that is taking the oxygen out of our schools, and our kids are the ones who are being sacrificed. One block, one child at a time. Labor is coming to a community near. We are going to change things for the people of this country. That is, say it with me, no justice, no peace, no peace.
George Floyd's death set off protests.
Sorry. Trying to get
29 seconds.
No.
Hundreds and
Stop.
thousands of others.
All right, we made it almost the whole way without big technical glitches. So, I know we gotta. It's 8 o'clock, and we gotta say goodbye. There's so much that we didn't get to, but I hope that you found this valuable, and maybe we can do a part 1.5 or something another time. But I think what I'm left with in this is, kind of coming back to the beginning. We have a duty to fight for our freedom. We have a duty to win. We have nothing to lose but our, we have a duty to win. We must love and support one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And the task in front of us is to unite these parts of our working class that seem like they're separate and alone and disconnected, and to find the intersections and that bring us together, not just around the interests of the majority, right, but around the interests of those who are most vulnerable. And that's how we have to give real meaning to the phrase an injury to one is an injury to all, which has been, one of the guiding principles behind the labor movement, but we don't always, put those words into action. And so we've got to find all of the ways to put those words into action, and transform the society so that it is one that is that respects human life and dignity and work and the experience that all of us bring to this incredible planet. So that's it. Does anybody Anna, do you want to say anything? Anybody have any last thoughts? I'm sorry about the abrupt ending, but
No worries. Yeah, just are there any questions or comments? If not, I would love for us all to just go on camera real quick to be able to give our guest the biggest round of applause we can. Thank you so much, Seth, for being here. Oh, I'm seeing Lydia's hand. Were you trying to ask something? Okay, you're doing this. Yay! Thank you so much, Seth.
I don't know why I can't. Thank you, guys. I'm fumbling with this here, and I can't see you at the moment because I've somehow minimized the screen. But
no worries. Yeah, you can either stop share, or since we're at the end of our time, we can go ahead and close it. The only thing is, with the other speaker, it ended up saving on his computer. Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if it does save on your computer, just make sure to send me the recording so I can upload it to our class page. We really appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you so much. You guys were a great group, and you really brought some, incredible ideas to the discussion. And I want to thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And good luck with everything that you're doing. And your next, those of you who are graduating with your next
It's pretty
phase.
engaging. We've said a lot more than we've said a lot this entire quarter, to be honest.
Yeah, this was the perfect way to end the quarter, I think, because you got extremely interactive, which some of our speakers did not. So thank you so much for doing that.
Well, thank you guys for having so much to say.
Have a beautiful
Absolutely.
weekend.
All right. Thank you. You too. Goodbye, everybody.
So, that was so good.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So how do can I close it without deleting the recording? Is there a way for me to check that?
It shouldn't delete it. It's just the question is whether it's going to do the recording on your computer or mine, because last week the recording went on the guest speaker's computer. So if it does that, just make sure to upload it and send it to me, because we always upload the talks onto our class page.
Okay.
You are so cut out for this. You need to do this more often.
This was so intimidating. I'm so nervous doing this stuff.
No, you shouldn't be. You're so good. Did you see the chat? They said
no. What is the chat?
Yeah, they said thank you so much for making your talk interactive. And everyone was saying thank you.
Good. Well, I hope they enjoyed it. I hope they got something from it.
Yeah, definitely. I think so.
All right. Let me know, if you hear any feedback, let me know.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be all good.
Okay. I want to hear the bad stuff too.
But you got to do this again for real. You're definitely cut out for this.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So don't be intimidated.
And it was great to see you, even if it's only
I know. Do you have any plans to come out to California? ever?
No. No. I would love to, but I just, I mean, I don't know how we're going to have any extra cash to do anything with not just starting college in the fall. Just like,
Yeah.
So
get it in now while you can.
and then Jossie's right behind her. But I'll tell you what, for absolutely, if I do, because I'd love to see you again. It'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. And if I go to Philadelphia, I'll let you know.
Well, say hi to everybody for me.
Will do.
Yes. Yes.
Sending you big hugs.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.